The year is 1455. The English countryside, once a patchwork of serene villages and lush fields, is now a battleground. Brothers turn against brothers, cousins against cousins, and the nobility is torn asunder by a single burning question: who has the right to rule? This is not the fictional world of Westeros, but the very real War of the Roses, a brutal, decades-long conflict that would inspire one of the most iconic stories of our time: Game of Thrones. The War of the Roses was a clash between two powerful houses, the Lancasters and the Yorks, both descended from the same royal bloodline. The Lancasters, symbolized by a red rose, and the Yorks, by a white one, fought not just for control of England, but for the very soul of the kingdom. Sound familiar? It should. The Starks and the Lannisters, with their direwolf and lion sigils, are clear echoes of this historic rivalry. But the War of the Roses was far more than a simple feud. It was a labyrinth of shifting alliances, shocking betrayals, and tragic figures. Take Richard III, the Yorkist king immortalized and arguably vilified by Shakespeare. Richard was a man of contradictions, a cunning strategist accused of murdering his own nephews to secure the throne. His story mirrors that of Game of Thrones' own Tyrion Lannister, a man burdened by his family's legacy, fighting to prove his worth in a world that sees him as a monster. And then there's Margaret of Anjou, the fierce Lancaster queen who led armies into battle, defying the expectations of her time. She was a woman who would stop at nothing to protect her son's claim to the throne, a figure as formidable as Cersei Lannister, but with the added weight of historical reality. Margaret's story is one of resilience and desperation, a reminder that the quest for power often comes at a devastating personal cost. But the War of the Roses is just one piece of the puzzle. To truly understand the real-life inspirations for Game of Thrones, we must travel further back in time, to the Byzantine Empire, a realm of glittering palaces, shadowy intrigues, and a throne that was as deadly as it was coveted. The Byzantine Empire was a place where power was never secure, where emperors could rise from obscurity only to be toppled by a dagger in the dark. This was a world where betrayal was commonplace, alliances were fleeting, and the line between friend and foe was often blurred. If the War of the Roses was a chess game, the Byzantine Empire was a knife fight in a darkened alley. Brutal, unpredictable, and utterly merciless. Consider the story of Justinian II, known as the Slit-Nosed. His life reads like a Game of Thrones plotline, complete with exile, mutilation, and a dramatic return to power. Justinian II was a young and ambitious emperor, but his harsh policies and heavy taxation made him deeply unpopular. In 695 AD, he was overthrown by a rebellion led by Leontios, a general who had no patience for Justinian's excesses. To ensure Justinian could never reclaim the throne, Leontios ordered his nose to be cut off, a mutilation that disfigured him and, according to Byzantine tradition, rendered him unfit to rule. Justinian was then exiled to Crimea, a remote outpost of the empire where he was expected to fade into obscurity. But here's where the story takes a twist worthy of George R.R. Martin. Justinian refused to accept his fate. With the help of allies, he escaped Crimea and sought refuge with the Khazars, a nomadic people who ruled the steppes. There, he married the Khazar Khagan's sister, forging a powerful alliance. Years later, he returned to Constantinople with an army, reclaiming the throne in a bloody coup. His second reign was marked by paranoia and brutality, as he sought revenge on those who had wronged him. Justinian's story is a testament to the lengths people will go to reclaim power and the price they often pay for it. His tale mirrors that of Game of Thrones' Daenerys Targaryen, who rises from exile to reclaim her birthright, but it also serves as a cautionary tale. Power can corrupt even the most determined of souls. And then there's Theodora, the actress turned empress who defied societal norms to become one of the most powerful women in Byzantine history. Born into humble beginnings, Theodora started her career as an actress and courtesan, a profession that placed her at the bottom of Byzantine society. But Theodora was no ordinary woman. She was brilliant, fearless, and fiercely ambitious. Her rise to power began when she caught the eye of Justinian I, then a high-ranking official. Despite the scandal their relationship caused, Justinian was determined to marry her. And when he became emperor, Theodora became his empress and his equal in many ways. Theodora's influence was profound. She was a skilled politician and a shrewd strategist, advising Justinian on matters of state, religion, and war. Her most famous moment came during the Nika riots in 532 AD, when Constantinople erupted in chaos. The city's factions, the Blues and the Greens, united against Justinian, burning buildings and demanding his overthrow. Trapped in his palace, Justinian considered fleeing. But Theodora, ever the strategist, delivered a speech that would go down in history. "Purple makes a fine shroud," she declared, referring to the imperial color. In other words, it was better to die as an emperor than live as a fugitive. Inspired by her courage, Justinian crushed the rebellion, slaughtering tens of thousands in the Hippodrome. It was a brutal reminder that in Byzantium, power was not given. It was taken, often at the edge of a sword. Theodora's story mirrors that of Game of Thrones' Marguerite Tyrell, a woman who uses her wit and charm to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics. But Theodora was more than just a political player. She was a trailblazer, a woman who defied the expectations of her time to shape the course of history. Her legacy is a testament to the idea that even in a world dominated by men, a woman could rise to the pinnacle of power and wield it with unmatched skill. The Byzantine Empire was not just a stage for individual ambition. It was a place where the entire court was a web of intrigue. The imperial palace was a labyrinth of secret passages, hidden chambers, and whispered conspiracies. Emperors were surrounded by advisors, generals, and eunuchs, all vying for influence. Loyalty was a rare commodity, and betrayal was often just a matter of time. One of the most infamous examples of Byzantine intrigue is the story of Basil I, the founder of the Macedonian dynasty. Basil started his career as a peasant, but rose to power through a combination of ambition, cunning, and sheer luck. He became a favorite of Emperor Michael III, who eventually made him co-emperor. But Basil's gratitude was short-lived. In 867 AD, he had Michael assassinated and took the throne for himself. Basil's rise to power is a reminder that in Byzantium, even the closest allies could become deadly enemies. The Byzantine Empire's story would not be complete without mentioning its dramatic fall. In 1453, after centuries of decline, Constantinople finally fell to the Ottoman Turks. The city's last emperor, Constantine XI, died fighting on the walls, a tragic figure who refused to abandon his people. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, but its legacy lived on, inspiring countless stories, including the intricate power struggles of Game of Thrones. The Byzantine Empire was a place where power was as fragile as it was coveted, where emperors could rise from obscurity only to be toppled by a dagger in the dark. Its stories of ambition, betrayal, and resilience are a testament to the timeless nature of the struggle for power, a struggle that continues to captivate us, whether in the pages of history or the world of Game of Thrones. So the next time you watch the intrigues of King's Landing, remember the real-life drama of Constantinople, where the Game of Thrones was played for keeps. But the Byzantine Empire is not the only source of inspiration. To the east, in the sprawling deserts of the Middle East, lies another chapter in this saga, the Abbasid Caliphate. Here in the heart of the Islamic Golden Age, power struggles were just as fierce and just as deadly. The Abbasid court was a place of opulence and danger, where poets and scholars mingled with assassins and conspirators. This was a world where the pursuit of knowledge and culture coexisted with the ruthless pursuit of power, creating an intoxicating blend of brilliance and brutality. The Abbasid Caliphate, which ruled from its capital in Baghdad, was a beacon of learning and innovation during its golden age. It was a time when the works of ancient Greek philosophers were translated into Arabic, when mathematicians pioneered new fields of study, and when poets and artists flourished under the patronage of the Caliphs. But beneath this glittering surface lay a world of intrigue and treachery, where the stakes were life and death, and where even the most powerful could fall in an instant. One of the most dramatic episodes in Abbasid history is the story of the Barmakid family. The Barmakids were a Persian family of viziers, chief advisors, who rose to prominence under the Abbasid Caliphs. For decades, they were the most powerful family in the empire, second only to the Caliph himself. They controlled the treasury, commanded armies, and influenced the Caliph's decisions. Their wealth was legendary, their influence unparalleled. They were the hand of the king, the Tywin Lannisters of their time. But their power made them dangerous and ultimately disposable. In 803 AD, Caliph Harun al-Rashid, once a close ally of the Barmakids, turned against them. In a sudden and brutal purge, the family was arrested, their wealth confiscated, and their influence erased overnight. The reasons for their fall remain shrouded in mystery. Some say it was jealousy, others claim it was a political maneuver to consolidate power. Whatever the cause, the Barmakids' sudden downfall echoes the fate of Game of Thrones House Stark, who are betrayed and scattered after their patriarch's execution. It's a stark reminder that in the Game of Thrones, no one is safe, not even those closest to the ruler. The Abbasid court was a place where alliances were as fragile as glass, and betrayal was often just a matter of time. The caliphs themselves were not immune to the dangers of court politics. Harun al-Rashid, one of the most famous Abbasid caliphs, was a man of contradictions. He was a patron of the arts and sciences, but also a ruthless ruler who would stop at nothing to maintain his power. His reign was marked by both cultural flourishing and political intrigue, a duality that defined the Abbasid court. The court was also a place where women wielded significant influence, often behind the scenes. Zubaydah, Harun al-Rashid's wife, was a powerful figure in her own right. She was known for her intelligence, her patronage of public works, and her ability to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics. Her story is a reminder that even in a male-dominated world, women could and did shape the course of history. The Abbasid Caliphate's legacy is one of contrasts, a golden age of learning and culture, but also a world of ruthless power struggles and sudden betrayals. Its stories of ambition, intrigue, and downfall are a testament to the timeless nature of the struggle for power, a struggle that continues to captivate us, whether in the pages of history or the world of Game of Thrones. So the next time you watch the intrigues of King's Landing, remember the real-life drama of the Abbasid court, where the Game of Thrones was played with just as much cunning and cruelty. And then there's the Mongol Empire, a vast and brutal realm that stretched from the steppes of Asia to the gates of Europe. The Mongols were the ultimate outsiders, a nomadic people who rose from the harsh, windswept plains of Central Asia to conquer the world. Their leader, Genghis Khan, was a figure of almost mythical proportions, a man who united the fractious tribes of the steppe through sheer force of will, charisma, and an unyielding vision of destiny. Under his command, the Mongols forged an empire that would become the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the edges of Eastern Europe. It was an empire built on horseback, fueled by ambition, and bound together by a code of loyalty and discipline that was as unbreakable as it was terrifying. But the Mongols were more than just conquerors. They were master strategists, using a combination of fear, diplomacy, and psychological warfare to achieve their goals. Genghis Khan and his successors were not merely brute force. They were cunning tacticians who understood the power of intimidation and the art of negotiation. They would often offer their enemies a choice: surrender and be spared, or resist and face annihilation. Many chose the former, and those who didn't became grim examples of the Mongols' ruthlessness. Cities that defied them were razed to the ground, their populations slaughtered or enslaved. Yet for those who submitted, the Mongols were surprisingly tolerant rulers, allowing local customs and religions to flourish under their rule. This duality, mercy for the compliant, mercilessness for the defiant, made them both feared and respected. The Mongols' story is one of ambition and ruthlessness, a real-life counterpart to Game of Thrones' Dothraki, the fierce horse lords who play a pivotal role in the struggle for power. Like the Dothraki, the Mongols were a people of the open plains, masters of horseback warfare, and bound by a culture that revered strength and loyalty. Their lightning-fast cavalry strikes and unparalleled mobility made them nearly unstoppable on the battlefield, much like the Dothraki hordes that sweep across the grasslands of Essos. And like the Dothraki, the Mongols were a force to be reckoned with, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous players in the Game of Thrones are those who come from outside the established order. They were outsiders who disrupted the status quo, reshaping the world in their image and leaving a legacy that would echo through the centuries. The Mongols' rise to power is a testament to the idea that even the most unlikely contenders can become world-shaping forces. From the margins of civilization, they emerge to challenge empires, topple kings, and rewrite the rules of power. Their story is one of audacity, resilience, and the unrelenting pursuit of greatness. A story that continues to inspire and terrify, much like the epic tales of Game of Thrones. So the next time you see the Dothraki charging into battle, remember the real-life horse lords of the steppe, whose empire once stretched across the known world, and whose legacy remains etched in the annals of history. As we journey through these ancient dynastic wars, one thing becomes clear: the struggle for power is a universal theme, one that transcends time and place. Whether it's the War of the Roses, the Byzantine Empire, the Abbasid Caliphate, or the Mongol Empire, the stories of these real-life conflicts are filled with the same drama, intrigue, and tragedy that make Game of Thrones so compelling. These were not just battles over territory or wealth. They were battles over identity, legacy, and the very soul of nations. Yet beneath the grand narratives of empires and dynasties lies a deeper, more intimate truth. These wars were fought by people, real people, with hopes, fears, and dreams that resonate across the centuries. But there's one more layer to this story, one that brings us closer to the heart of what makes Game of Thrones so enduring. It's the human element, the personal stakes that make these grand conflicts so relatable. Behind every throne is a person, a mother, a father, a son or a daughter, fighting not just for power, but for survival, for love, for legacy. These were individuals who carried the weight of their family's hopes and the burden of their ancestors' ambitions. Their stories remind us that history is not just about empires rising and falling. It's about the people who lived, loved, and lost within them. Take, for example, the story of Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville during the War of the Roses. Edward, a charismatic and ambitious king, shocked the English court by secretly marrying Elizabeth, a widow of modest noble standing. Their union was a scandal, not just because it was conducted in secret, but because it defied the political alliances that were expected of a king. Elizabeth, a woman of remarkable beauty and intelligence, became a queen who wielded significant influence. But her rise also made her a target. Their marriage was a tale of love and ambition, a union that could easily fit into the world of Westeros, where personal desires often clash with political necessity. Yet their love story was not without its tragedies, as their family would later be torn apart by betrayal and bloodshed. Or consider the tragic fate of the princes in the Tower, the young sons of Edward IV. After Edward's death, his sons, Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, were declared illegitimate and imprisoned in the Tower of London by their uncle, Richard III. They were never seen again, and their disappearance remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Were they murdered to secure Richard's claim to the throne? Or did they vanish into obscurity, their identities erased by the machinations of power? Their story is a haunting reminder of the cost of power, a theme that resonates deeply in Game of Thrones. It's a tale of innocence lost, of children caught in the crossfire of adult ambitions, and of the lengths to which people will go to secure their legacy. These stories of love, loss, and legacy are what make history so compelling. They remind us that behind every crown, every battle, and every empire, there are human beings with dreams and fears not so different from our own. It's this human element that makes Game of Thrones so powerful, and it's what connects us to the real-life dramas of the past. Whether it's a queen fighting for her son's future, a king torn between love and duty, or a child whose life is cut short by the ambitions of others, these are the stories that endure. They remind us that the struggle for power is not just about thrones and titles. It's about the people who fight for them, and the lives that are forever changed in the process. So what can we learn from these ancient dynastic wars? Perhaps it's that the struggle for power is as old as civilization itself, a constant in the ever-changing tapestry of human history. Or perhaps it's that the stories we tell, whether in the pages of a book, on the screen, or in the annals of history, are ultimately about us, our hopes, our fears, and our unending quest for meaning in a chaotic world. As we close this chapter, let's remember that the real-life inspirations for Game of Thrones are not just tales of kings and queens, battles and betrayals. They are stories of people, flawed, complex, and utterly human. And in their struggles, we see reflections of our own, reminding us that the Game of Thrones is not just a story. It's a part of who we are. So the next time you watch Game of Thrones, remember the real-life wars that inspired it. Remember the Lancasters and the Yorks, the Byzantine emperors, the Abbasid Caliphs, and the Mongol Khans. Remember the people behind the thrones and the timeless lessons their stories teach us. Because in the end, the Game of Thrones is not just a tale of power. It's a tale of humanity.